Hi, everyone. It's Practical Mystics, where we learn and explore spiritual and higher dimensional practices and beliefs with practical action steps on how we can work with this information to better our lives and the lives of the people around us. So, I am Lisa Heidle, and I am your host, and I'm here with my very special guest, Suzanne Bellavista.
You got
Yeah.
it.
Okay, great. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's really nice to be back with you today. I know it's been some time since we've talked, so it's really good to reconnect, and I'm so excited to share today. And that it's
Oh,
nice to know people care about astrology.
Oh, it's so good. And Suzanne is a life purpose astrologer, and she and I are going to be discussing the big three today. We're going to be talking about the sun, the moon, and rising signs. And then we're going to get some action steps on how we can get this to work in our lives and exactly what does it mean when we start integrating and using these aspects of our birth chart. So, Suzanne Bellavista is a life purpose astrologer and online meditation teacher who helps star seeds, earth angels, empaths, and creatives fulfill their life purpose and find inner peace. She is the host of the popular weekly podcast called Astrology for Star Seeds and offers one on one life purpose coaching. She also offers a written life purpose astrology report and an astrology based monthly planner. More information about Suzanne and her offerings can be found at soulfullivingproject.com, which will be in our description. So, and that's a wonderful, wonderful bio there. How long have you been offering one on one coaching?
So I started doing one-on-one coaching without the astrology piece in 2017. Then once I got trained up on the astrology, I probably added that in probably about a year later in 2018. And honestly, I before that I was a ghostwriter and a book editor, so I was doing a lot of one-on-one work then. And I actually have a master's in pastoral counseling, which I got in my early 20s. So I was thinking about it today. I actually started studying astrology in 2016. So what feels like it was just yesterday is we're getting to, I think, that almost the 8-year mark now.
Yeah. And what an interesting progression,
Mhm.
right, on your life path. And I find that the most interesting people have had very much, it's not a linear life experience, right? They've had, they've explored this area of spirituality, then they've moved over to this area but each thing is a stepping stone to the next. So I think that's a very interesting progression there.
Yeah, and when you look back, you can see the threads that tie it together. At the time, you're not always so sure, but now looking back, I can see when I got my master's in pastoral counseling because I was interested in helping people and spirituality. And then I actually wasn't mature enough or ready, or I didn't want to be a therapist. So what I discovered was I did want to create a safe place for people to tell their stories. So that's why I was a ghostwriter. And now years later, I said, no, I'm ready to write my own books and I'm ready to really do the coaching work, not just the writing work. So to me, it all makes sense now. But at the time, it was very much trying to follow my heart and the next inspiration.
And listen to that intuition, right? That's the hardest thing. We're going to have a guest on. Our next guest is going to be talking about spirituality and intuition.
I just was delighted when you checked in and wanted to have this conversation because you went right to, what you are calling the big three, the foundation to a birth chart. And I feel like it's a wonderful place for people to start. It's to take astrology to the next level beyond their quote zodiac sign or sun sign, which most people know something about, and go deeper without it being totally overwhelming. So I think this is going to be a great launching point for people who wherever you are on the astrology path, it's going to be a fun review if you already know astrology and if you're just intrigued but you've never dived in.
Let's start with a basic question for those who are not in the know. And what is astrology?
I think this is such a good question. And when I contemplate it, even though it seems like a basic question, it really, because I was thinking about this earlier, it made me dig deep. And the way I would like to boil it down is that astrology is the study of planets and stars that you then use as symbols for understanding, whether that be understanding yourself, those you love, others, or the collective. And also, it is the study of the planets and the stars in a way that helps you become aware of the current seasons and cycles of life,
Mm,
which both have a lot of practical use. So that's the simplest way I can distill what astrology is.
it's great. So then a birth chart for someone would be where the stars and the planets were in the night sky
Mhm.
the moment they took breath. Is that accurate?
Exactly. And that's what I look to. Like, if you want to use astrology for understanding yourself, a great place to start is to get a copy of your birth chart, which we'll probably talk about later in terms of the practical section, but people can go online to astro.com and run their own birth chart. And so your birth chart tells you, I think of it as like your cosmic DNA. It tells you things like, what is your communication style? That would be your Mercury. What do you tend to be attracted to? That would be your Venus. What are maybe some of your life's biggest challenges? That would be your Saturn. And then the other piece is your transit chart. So your transit chart is what you look at for the seasons and cycles of your life, as I was mentioning earlier. And that is when we run a basically a picture of the night sky at this time we run a picture of the night sky on the zodiac wheel and we place it on top of your birth chart. It's like a dial that, depending on what your chart was when you were born, your birth chart, then tells us, which part of your chart is being triggered. Because in your astrology chart, you have planets, and then you have those planets occur against certain zodiac signs, which are essentially the constellations in the night sky. And then if you know your birth time, you can figure out what quote house of the astrology chart that's happening. And the house is the area of your life, an area of your life. So the first house is the beginning of all things and your identity and the way that the world sees you. Whereas the seventh house is your relationships, your one-on-one partnerships, your life partner. You can look at your 10th house for career. So that should give a little bit of a better idea of the layers of astrology.
Yeah, that's great. So for clarity, so your transit chart is it's the snapshot of where everything is today.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
that can tell you, and then when you juxtapose it over your birth chart, you can see how everything's progressing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, that is true. That is true. And I would say, it might help too, just to imagine if we were to kind of look at space, like an astrologer has today, we're lucky enough we have computer software that runs all this on a flat circle. That's the zodiac wheel. But I still like to connect it to what's going on in the universe, because for me, part of why I love astrology is because I feel like it connects me to nature, it connects me to the stars. And so the zodiac wheel that you see is a circle and it's flattened, but what it really is representing is the sphere around the earth. And everything in astrology, the astrology that you usually hear about, is from our vantage point here on earth. So when we say like we run your transit chart, what we're saying is that, say, Mars, when you were born, was when you looked up at the sky, maybe it was in the constellation of Aries. But then this many years later, maybe like, well, for right now, the time of this recording, Mars is in Aquarius. And so you would see Mars in a different part of the sky. Now, that again is based on where we are on Earth, looking up. And I recently learned that there's a kind of astrology called galactic astrology that is heliocentric. So this is like really out there. But if you wanted to know so that uses math to tell you if you were on the sun, what the zodiac signs are. And the reason that's supposed to be helpful is for people like me who believe we're star seeds and you want to go beyond your earth life. So that's like some really fun out there stuff. We can do an interview on that another time.
Oh, we're going to do that. Let me write that down. We're doing that. Okay, that's fascinating. Our sun is our personality, right? It's
Absolutely.
is it how we present, or is
Yeah,
it
it's I like to think of it as how we shine our light in the world naturally. And if you think about the sun versus the moon, the sun is just beaming its light. Everyone can see it. It's the way that it's your natural urges, and it is your personality. It's your conscious personality that you're aware of, that other people can see.
I'm a Taurus sun. Okay. And everything that you think about a Taurus, I probably am. Okay.
I would love, would you be willing to share your description of what it means to be a Taurus sun? Because frankly, for me, I'm still always gathering data. Like I study in books, but I love to hear real live people, if you care to share, and then I'll share
Oh,
my.
yeah. Oh, I love being a Taurus sun. I do. I am, well, the typical definition for a Taurus is stubborn, and I can be when it's a value that's important to me. I can dig my feet in and no one's going to move me. Not going to happen. But most of the time I'm pretty easy. I like my creature comforts. I love nature. I feel very divine feminine in my nature. I love, textures and anything that gives me comfort. I really need a lot of alone time, kind of downtime, to really, use my energy. And then when I'm ready to use it, then I just kind of bowl on through. So that's kind of my definition about a Taurus. What is yours as the expert?
Yeah, so I tend to think you hit a lot of good points. I think of Taurus as someone who's willing to be slow and steady and patient to get the job done. I think of Taurus as amazing finishers, and you give a job to a Taurus to make sure it gets done and it gets done well.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else. I definitely, what you were saying, and it reminds me a little bit of my sun, because I've got sun in Cancer, like that, so Taurus is an earth sign, Cancer is a water sign, but we both like comfort. And, this idea of appreciating, tell me about this, Lisa. Like, it seems to me like Taurus on the one hand seems very practical to me, but on the other hand appreciates and savors the richness of life, and there's such an abundance in that. So for you, do you feel like you're part practical and part like luxury? I mean, if so, how do you make sense of that in
I
your life?
do actually, and I sometimes get frustrated when I'm in my Taurus energy because, for listeners, we have all of these in our chart, correct? And so we can pull these energies anytime. But the ones that are in our big three, we have more access to. I get frustrated because I feel like I'm plotting. Not plotting. I do that as well in work, but plotting, right? Kind of slow moving. And, sometimes I see people who just, like a Scorpio, they just fire off, and I'm more of, okay, let me think about this. Let me reflect. When I put my head down and work, I'm step by step by step. And anytime I've tried to push through that, when I'm in that energy, it never works. I end up having to go back and redo the work. I know my speed. Yeah.
And this is where knowing your sun sign and different aspects of your astrology chart are so helpful, because you know this about yourself. I can relate. My Venus is in Taurus, and that's how one of the ways that I make money. Also, it's what's called my guiding planet, which again will be for astrology part 2. And so I really get the Taurus energy. There's just no way around it for me either. It's my business. I've built it. It's think of us as builders, one block and a foundation upon the next. I know I will get to the finish line, but I say, don't hire me to do something fast. Hire me to do something well.
Oh, that's going to be my new mantra. I'm going to put that on everything, my business cards, everything. And then to your question about luxuriousness, I tell you, I can walk into any store and pick out the most expensive thing. Within seconds. I recognize quality when I see it, and it comes so quick to me, and can't always support that in my own lifestyle, but man, I can tell you if that's a good quality item to pick out. Yeah.
That is well said. And again, I can relate to that as someone with Venus and Taurus.
Yeah. So may I ask what your sun sign
Yeah,
is?
absolutely. So my sun is in Cancer,
Oh, you mentioned that. Mhm.
and Cancer is very nurturing. It is the sign of the mother, but you don't have to be a mother. You're just somebody who very naturally nurtures, cares for others, wants to make sure everyone's comfortable, safe, secure, tends to be domestic. Now, your sun sign can be in different houses of your chart. For me, it's in my fourth house of home. So I am incredibly comfortable. I'm the master of my domain at home. It comes very naturally to me. Not to say I always want to do it, but to keep the house clean, even if I don't love cooking, I feel it's my responsibility as for my kids to cook for them. So, but if you are a little bit less of a traditional Cancer, you're not so much that like maternal figure. It's also intuitive because it's a water sign. You know, it can feel whatever. If you're in a bathtub and someone dumps cold water in there, you're going to feel it right away. That's a Cancer. We feel other people's emotions. We can read, we walk in a room, we can feel the temperature, we talk to a person. So I would say, and also we're very private. When you do get through our shell, you know, that crab shell, because that's the sign of Cancer, you will find a tender, loving person who may be quite an ability to be emotional, to cry, but also we're very private and slow to come out of our shell. But of course, as you I think hinted at earlier, we have so many parts to ourselves as a person. So for example, quick jump ahead, my moon's in Leo, which is totally different than Cancer. So, you know, and I
Mhm.
want people to take that away from this. If you've ever read your zodiac sign or your horoscope and you feel like it doesn't fit you perfectly, first of all, it's impossible to write a perfect horoscope for everyone, you know, that's going to match you. But also, astrology is wonderfully complex and there's many things you can look at. Even with my sun in Cancer, I will look different than a different sun in Cancer because my sun in Cancer, I have to look to the Cancer is ruled by the moon. So that means you also look at my moon in Leo. If someone else has their moon in Taurus, their sun in Cancer is going to be a little different, or if their moon's in Aries. So if you're intrigued by astrology, give yourself permission and time to learn about the layers.
And then, so our moon sign reflects the sun,
Yep.
obviously, right? And can you give us a little more in depth about what the moon sign does for us and what it means?
Yeah. So the moon is it represents your inner life. So again, if you think of your sun is how you naturally are shining your light on everyone, your moon is like your private inner needs. So it's like even unconscious sometimes. I say it's the less conscious part of you because most of us, as we grow and age and mature, we start to know ourselves. So it's helpful to know your moon because it gets you in touch with a part of yourself you're a little bit less conscious of. And my teacher taught me the moon as your inner child. So I like to think of the moon, it's your emotional life, it's your security needs, it's what you need to feel seen, it's your desires. The sun is the masculine principle, and the moon is the feminine principle. The sun is what everyone sees, the moon is what you feel inside of yourself. And those close to you may be aware of that, but especially upon first meeting, people probably wouldn't know about your moon sign.
Okay, I love that. And, you know, the masculine and feminine, we are going to be talking about the divine feminine and divine masculine on this channel in the future. So I'm glad that you brought that
Excellent.
up. And, you know, understanding that we have both of those energies inside of us. And we have we have those energies all over our chart.
Yes,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
we also have Mars and Venus, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's so good. So then we know our sun, which is how people see us in the world, right? How we present our personality. And then we have our moon, which is our inner world, right? Our internal, right?
Mhm.
And then we have what's called the rising sign or the ascendant. And if I understand correctly, this is a biggie in the chart,
Yes,
right? Can
yes,
you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely. For me, learning my rising sign was coming home. And I want to let everyone know that if they're happen to be new to astrology, when people say, what is your sign? What is your zodiac sign? Everyone's talking about their sun sign. So
Mhm.
it's really the first thing you learn. Maybe you then learn your moon sign. For me, I didn't know about the rising sign until whatever point. I maybe it was in 2016 when I started studying. And to me, learning my rising sign was a missing piece of my chart. It was coming home. So astronomically speaking, the rising sign is the constellation that is rising on the eastern horizon the moment you take your first breath from your vantage point at that exact spot, which is why when you run your birth chart, you need to put your location of where you were born and the time you were born. So the rising sign has some similarities to the sun in that it is to some degree like your personality expressed, and it's what people see of you. But the way you will hear it typically described is your rising sign is the mask that you wear and the way that people see you and the way you want to be seen. Because of my own experience learning about my rising sign, I actually have come up with the analogy of, instead of a mask, I think about it as a pair of glasses. You say she wears rose-colored glasses. I think of the rising sign as the glasses that you wear and the color that you wear. So my rising sign is Pisces. So yes, people see me as someone who's like a Pisces because I'm wearing the Pisces glasses, but also I see the world through the Pisces glasses. So Pisces, for example, is actually, Lisa, you'll be able to relate to this since what we'll talk about later, but your North Node is in Pisces.
Mhm.
Pisces loves imagination and creativity and can express that in different ways depending on their personality. So it may be writing fiction or reading fiction or creating art, maybe very spiritual, musical, very go with the flow, loves the ocean, the water, the beach. And so when I found out that I was a Pisces rising, it was like running home to a part of myself I wanted to give a big hug. Like the part of me that could spend hours swimming in the swimming pool all summer long when I was a kid, adored walking in the beach and collecting shells and losing track of time, that wasn't there in my Leo moon. A little bit in my Cancer sun because Cancer is a water. For me as an astrologer, it's helpful. It's helpful to come home to a piece of yourself.
Brought up. So I love that. So we have the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. So let me see if I can clarify these for myself. So our sun is our personality,
Mhm.
right? And then our
I
moon,
call it it's our outer, I'll throw in the word outer. It's our personality. It's our outer personality that the world can see.
okay, the outer personality the world can see. The moon is our internal
Yep.
world.
Inner internal world, inner
Yeah.
life. Mhm.
And then our rising is how people view us, and then
Mhm.
how we view the world.
Yes.
Okay,
And if I can add one thing about the
let's do.
rising sign, the way I think about it is if it is the zodiac sign or the constellation that's on the horizon, it's like when you're born, you're looking out. That's the way you see the world. As a Pisces rising, my worldview is Piscean. That means that I believe everyone should be able to have hours to daydream and spirituality is so important. Well, of course, that's not true for everyone else. I mean, a Libra rising would be thinking that, oh, it's important for everyone to get along, everything should be fair, the world should be a just place. So I like to, this is like my own take on it. I haven't really seen it anywhere, but I think of it too as your worldview to some degree, because it's just like I said, it's those glasses. You're seeing the world through rose-colored glasses or purple glasses or Cancer glasses or Leo glasses. I feel like the timing of this particular topic that we're doing, astrology, is fabulous because on January 20th, if you're in the United States, or the 21st if you're in Australia, of this past, of 2024, Pluto moved into Aquarius, which is what's called a generational planet. Because it's so far out in the solar system, it stays in the same zodiac sign from our vantage point here on Earth for a long time, for like between 12 and 20 years. So Pluto just moved into Aquarius, and Aquarius rules astrology. So we're starting a new 20-year rebirth of astrology from now till 2043. And, when you ask that question, what is astrology? I wanted to share that as we progress into this Pluto and Aquarius era, we're getting more specialized versions of astrology. We're getting financial astrologers. We're getting relationship astrologers have always been like really popular because everyone wants to know about their relationships, but medical astrologers, career astrologers. So, and I also think although Aquarius rules astrology, it also rules the wild, the weird, the wacky, the eccentric, out in space. And so I think it's a time for us to come forward with courage for our unique individual gifts to serve the community. And so tarot, Reiki, acupuncture, sound healing, all these quote alternative modalities will probably continue to become more normalized and appreciated in the next 20 years.
That's the foundation for this channel, is to share with people all of those ideas, so that they can a one-stop shop, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to go to Practical Mystics and figure this out. Let's see what they have to say.
I love the practical and the mystical together, by the way.
Me too. What led you to astrology?
Astrology was something that was in the portfolio of things I was interested in. If I always liked New Age bookstores. And I trace it back to being 6 years old and stepping outside in my suburban neighborhood with my mom, and she was taking the trash out at night. And I, for some reason, I looked up at the sky, and it was a black night sky, and I saw stars everywhere. And it took my breath away. And I remember it almost feels like it was the first time I consciously saw the night sky with the stars in it. And I remember having this feeling, that's home. That's my home. And to be honest with you, since that time, I've learned that souls sometimes live in other galaxies before they come to Earth. And literally within the last 12 months, I received a message in my own channeling sessions that my soul has spent a lifetime on Andromeda. So what started as just a connection to the stars and an interest in astrology blossomed really when I was about 40 something years old. And I was married, had been married for many years. And I was having some challenges in my marriage, which really blew my mind because we had been happily married for many years. And I remembered an astrologer I had met in my 20s who had been helpful. I went back to her to say, what's going on? And astrology was so helpful to me in understanding why my life was changing that I never looked back, and I got to know my chart, and I realized I got the green light from my chart. It's like, you're interested in astrology? Let's go study it. And I've never looked back.
I love that. And I also love that feeling, what you described, of feeling like, where's my home? Right? Because I think people, they, reach a certain point in their life where they're like, okay, who am I? Why am I here? And, we can ask these questions both on a 3D level, talking to the person across from us, and then we can go broader into these spiritual, ideas and realms and metaphysics, and expand the question, because that's really what ascension is, right? It's expansion. It's an expansion of the mind, of the soul.
It's nice to be able to share that in a safe place because, that's not something people talk about every day, to be honest with you.
It isn't. And that's why I love this channel, because we're going to get to talk about things that, one, I love to talk about, but not everyone is available for that. If they can't see, touch, smell, taste it, it doesn't exist. And I'm like, have you never been in love? That's a feeling.
That's so true, Lisa.
This is Practical Mystics, right? And one of the reasons I wanted to do this channel is because, we can learn a lot of information, but we don't always get the ideas, the action steps of how to actually utilize what we've learned, right? Or it's just information that we've received. And then we have to kind of trial and error it for ourselves. So I wanted the practical steps on this channel as well.
So I'm going to start with even like helping people just literally pick up astrology after this, listening to this. The first thing you can do if you're interested is, one way is to actually get a copy of your birth chart. And as I was saying, you can go to astro.com and they have an option to put in your information and get a free birth chart. From there, you will have to do some research and of course you could shortcut it and work with a professional astrologer, but if you want to just be able to do it yourself right after this conversation, there's so much on the internet. So run your chart and look for, if you don't know how to read the signs and symbols, you can look up what are the signs and symbols of astrology. The moon's going to be real obvious. It's going to look like a little moon. And then next to it is going to be a symbol. Actually, when you run it on astro.com, I think it's on the left side, it will tell you an abbreviation. It'll say sun in
Yes.
CAN for Cancer, moon in Leo, that kind of thing. So now that I think about it, right there, you can just look on the left side of the chart and see what your moon is, what your sun is. And then they will, I don't know if they call it the rising sign or the ascendant, but that'll be there. And you can, like that, search on the internet and look up moon in, let's say you find out your moon is in Scorpio. You can just say, tell me the meaning of moon in Scorpio, and Google will give you a ton of great articles. So that's the first place you could start. Or there's tons of good books out there. The one I'll share that my mentor that inspired all of my astrology is called Discovering Your Soul Mission, New Rules for a New Age. And you can find your North Node in there, you can find your South Node in there. And she actually goes through other parts of astrology without you having to enter any information.
Oh,
So
I'll put that description in that link in the description as
that's
well.
a great book.
Yeah.
And then if you want to take it to the next level, there's two ways that I would do this. One is, yes, you can hire a professional astrologer and they can run your transit chart, and that's where they help you find the seasons and cycles of life. So if you're wondering things like, should I change jobs? And you're literally like, you're really struggling with it because you feel like you want to change jobs, but you don't want to let your family down. Or like me, do you change professions altogether halfway through your life? You may be asking, oh, I really want to meet a life partner. And you would love to get some reassurance. Oftentimes people come to me and ask, I want to meet a life partner. I say, well, I can see in your chart that, some stuff is going to be firing in your seventh house soon. Or I might say, well, it looks like, stuff is in your fifth house right now. So it's a better time to work on like self-love and hobbies, but don't worry, you'll get there. Like over time, this is going to be stimulated. And I don't think of astrology as fatalistic. It's like, if you want to meet somebody, there's other ways to create that than what the
Right.
astrology chart says. But if you have questions, like you wish you could look up at quote God or the universe and say, tell me what to do, you can work with an astrologer to see what's quote firing in your chart right now. And then the other thing is something that I've created that I want people to be able to, I want astrology to be accessible. So I have that 6-month planner that you mentioned in the beginning. The planner that I have, it has, you get access to all the major astrology events every month. And then there's a legend and a key that decodes like what they generally mean with journal prompts. I was trained as I'd call like a Socratic astrologer, where it's all about asking questions. And so a great way to use astrology is ask yourself questions. Your intuition tells you where you need to go. Because I'm telling you, clients come to me and they ask, should I be changing jobs right now? I'm having trouble with my kids, and I can see it showing up in their chart. So right now, let's see if I can think of a good example. So Mars is in Aquarius right now. Mars is about motivation and taking action. Aquarius is about self-empowerment. So one way to unlock that is to write in your journal, how do I want to take action to be more self-empowered? And so in this planner, I have like 5 questions for each planet, 5 questions for each sign, and you kind of create your own little mashup and you just answer whatever questions you want. And I truly believe that this helps you unlock the meaning of astrology in your life today.
Oh, well, I have one final question and then we're going to go ahead and sign off. So if you do not know your birthplace or your exact birth time, and usually it's birth time that people are lacking, if they're lacking anything about their information from their birth certificate or from, ask a parent if they're living or an aunt or uncle. If that's not accessible, then what do you do?
And there's a few options there. It is definitely an initial bit of a stumper, The first thing you need to know is that if you do not know your birth time, an astrologer can run what's called a sunrise chart. And what they do is noon automatically gets set at the time. And the astrologer can spend a little time and look at it, and they can tell you which things they can be confident about and which things that they can't. But I just want people to know that even if the birth time can't be run, there's so much still in your chart, because we're still going to see aspects between the planets and how they position and pull on each other. We will see what sign the planet is in. There's a small chance the moon might have changed signs during that day, but most everything else, you're probably going to be in the right spot. What we might not be as clear on would be things like which area of your life or the houses that are being affected, like we talked about career and that kind of thing, career, family. But if you don't know your birth time, you can, but you do know the location, you can call town hall wherever you are. The city organization can get you sometimes have a record of this. Similarly, the hospital might, definitely check your birth certificate. Baby book, sometimes parents, if you're lucky enough to have access to something like that, people can look in there. If you have access to your parents, of course, you can ask them the time. They won't always get it exactly right. And then there's something called rectification. So if you really, really want to know your birth chart, then find an astrologer who specializes in rectification. And they can look at certain important events in your life, and it helps them figure out, believe it or not, it helps them figure out your time of birth.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's good.
And
I'll do a
and
little research and add that to the description as
and there's
well.
and there's astrologers who may not do full on rectification, but they might be able to still, if you have some guesstimate of maybe a couple hours, you can work with your astrologer over time to get a sense of what feels most comfortable to you in terms of your rising sign. And I so truly believe astrology is a tool that's meant for you, and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
If you don't know your birth time, I often feel that universe doesn't want you to know right now those little pieces, or they want you to focus on other parts of your chart. But yes, there are some options. Stick with it, be patient,
But it
and
doesn't limit you from being able to utilize some of it, right?
absolutely, there's a
Okay.
ton. For example, you can figure out, so for example, you know what your communication style is. Is it in Cancer like mine, or is it in Aries? You just don't know if it's like what realm, like what house it's in. But honestly, the most important thing is the planet and the sign it's in. So you've got a lot to work with.
Okay. Oh, great. Well, I would love to have you back. We obviously touched upon many things that we can discuss in the future. And once again, check out Suzanne's website.
Soulfullivingproject.com is the website, and you can find all kinds of goodies there. You can find my podcast. You can find, a link to the planner if you want to buy that. There's the freebie if you want to get your soul mission starter kit. You can find out what your soul mission is. So a lot of good stuff there.
Okay. And all those links, once again, will be in the description so people can find that. And do you have any last things that you want to offer to listeners?
Well, the one thing I will circle back on, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to share, and that is sort of like, why does astrology work, or how does astrology work? And this is something that I don't think people will get other places, because I do meditate and I channel. And I was told by my spirit team that the reason astrology works is because long ago our ancestors were looking at the skies, they were telling stories, telling myths, and the stars agreed to allow meaning to be projected upon them. The planets themselves have an essence, as we were just saying earlier. Mars is the warrior, Venus is the lover, but the stars agreed to have meaning projected onto them. And once they agreed, energetic portals were created between man and the heavens, and it is now a tool we can use. And there are two kinds of astrologies out there. There's a Vedic astrology, which the Indians use, and there's Western astrology, which is what I talk about, and you'll see a lot here if you're in the United States or Canada. And the way I've understood, don't ever let anyone fool you and say astrology is not real, because, for example, Western astrology no longer is attached to the constellations, it's attached to a fixed zone of sky. Whereas Eastern astrology, Vedic, is attached to the constellations, because the constellations move over time. There's a precession that happens. Both of them work. You will find your way to the astrologer that's got the information for you that you're meant to have at that time. I've looked at both my charts. They both can make sense to me. And the reason is because our ancestors, these energy channels were created. And I don't remember which scientist did this experiment, but I know that Light, when you look at it, can be seen as a particle or a wave, depending on the observer, depending on what you expect. Scientists know this is real, this is true. This to me says, this is why Vedic astrology can be real and Western astrology can be real, because we're a living dynamic system and we can have agreements. We have agreements with things. So if astrology intrigues you, go for it. If tarot intrigues you, go for that. Whatever you're drawn to, your soul is going to work with you in the cosmos and the universe to have it make meaning for you.
Oh, that was beautifully put. Thank you so much. And I have nothing to add to that. That was just wonderful. All right. Thank you, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to check out all of Suzanne's offerings. All right, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.